My mother arrived on Ellis Island when both she and the 20th century were still in their teens. For Mama, America was love at first sight. She told me how her mother descended the ship's gangplank, knelt on the ground, and kissed the earth, murmuring, "America, America," literally kissing freedom on the face. Mama's irrepressible personality was contagious even with complete strangers, like the time we're walking along the street and we pass this bent-over woman pulling up weeds in her garden. Mama stops, leans over the fence and says, "Nice cabbage, dear." I mean, come on. We're not talking crocuses or daffodils, it's freaking cabbage. I figured cabbage was cabbage. Not Mama. She could see beauty in the ordinary. It would become a family joke at mealtime. My brother might say, "Nice potatoes, dear." Or I would offer, "Nice carrots, dear." When I was 5 years old, my parents purchased a small farm in Wisconsin and stocked it with a dozen cows, a few ducks, some chickens, and a dog. Pop continued working on the railroad in Chicago, coming home weekends. So Mama, my brother, and I ran this little dairy farm. Life wasn't always easy. Cows got sick, crops dried up, pets died, water pipes froze. Yet somehow Mama always managed to see the cup as half full rather than half empty. She was the perpetual purveyor of optimism. "We will see your puppy in heaven," she assured me, after a cow had trampled my puppy to death. "We will buy a new bike, Johnny," she said when Pa accidentally backed over my Schwinn two-wheeler with the pickup. Mama was born in Hungary and grew up working in the fields with her parents, so there wasn't much she couldn't do. She did the traditional things like embroidering delicate tablecloths and baking pastries, but she could also milk cows, deliver newborn calves, and dispatch the chickens for the soup kettle with a swift swipe of her hatchet. Each spring, Mama planted a half-acre garden with a huge variety of vegetables, and every summer, she canned all the produce we didn't eat. In the 1950s, before freezing became popular, that's how farm mothers fed their families during winter. I can still see Mama sweltering, sweating over that wood-burning kitchen stove, her arms dripping with sweat, her face nearly as red as the tomatoes she was canning. We hadn't yet heard of air conditioning, and the temperature might be in the mid-90s on any August afternoon. And canning vegetables over that hot stove was more like working in a foundry with molten metals than preparing food for her family. But I still remember the beauty of her canned peaches, appearing like dozens of setting suns as they floated in glass jars, cooling on the back porch. One particular summer remains seared in my mind more than half a century later. Mama had canned over 200 quarts of vegetables, peaches, and applesauce. They stood on our basement shelves in orderly columns, like an army platoon, promising to feed us throughout the coming winter. One evening while watching I Love Lucy on our black and white TV, I heard a thunderous crash in the basement. It sounded like an explosion in a glass factory. One loud kaboom, followed by a series of violent aftershocks. Then a cascade of tinkling glass trickling to complete silence. Well, almost complete silence, because arising from the darkness of the cellar came a sound I had never heard before. It was the sound of Mama sobbing. Moments earlier, I had seen her walk through the kitchen carrying a couple of jars of dill pickles, the last of her summer's canning. Now, rushing down the basement stairs, I found Mama sitting on the cold earthen floor with her back against a stone wall, sobbing. She was surrounded by 200 broken glass jars that were oozing pickles, peaches, corn, tomatoes, applesauce, and green beans. And her face wore a look of despair I had never seen before. When she placed those last 2 pickle jars on the top shelf, the entire system of shelves had collapsed with a devastating domino effect that transformed Mama's summer in that hot kitchen into a huge pile of broken glass that smelled like dill pickle, cinnamon, apple, corn chowder soup. So she was sitting there in the basement, and I said, "Mama, I'll help, but I had no idea of how." And for once, she didn't laugh, and she didn't reassure me, and I felt utterly helpless. Finally, she slowly got up and said, "Go get shovel, we clean up." I raced up the stairs, through the kitchen, out to the barn. Finally, I would be able to do something. I found a shovel and a garbage pail, and we spent half the night and most of the next day shoveling broken glass and vegetable fruit soup off the floor. Somehow we survived that winter. Friends from church shared jars of food, and we bought these vegetables in tin cans from Kroger's. But I never again walked barefoot in the basement, as little diamonds of light reminded me that embedded glass splinters were now a permanent part of the dirt floor. And for the next few years, the basement retained an aroma of pickles and peaches with a touch of cinnamon applesauce. Now, during times of crisis or trauma, I remember the summer Mama sobbed. That awful night, I learned the meaning of resilience, even as I listened to my mother cry. Because when spring came, Mama planted her garden afresh, and the following summer she canned again. Sometimes now, when I open a jar of dill pickles, I remember that even when all appears lost, spring will return.